Hey cosplay fans, so I'm here with a Star Wars based cosplay. I'm coming from the Star Wars galaxy here, and I'm not showing you how to make the Tusken Raider mask, but instead I'm showing you one part of it. We're going to be making the moisture trap that the Tusken Raiders wear around their neck underneath their desert hood. So, before we get into that, if you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe now. Make sure you click that like button, comment down below if you have any questions, reach out to me there, and hit that bell for notifications. What do you say? Let me show you how it's done. Now I'm going to start my build by actually doing some research first. And what I do is I like to get my Star Wars Complete Visual Dictionary. This is kind of a must for anyone that wants to build a whole bunch of Star Wars props or see how the universe is put together, because they have a lot of detailed pictures showing different things within the Star Wars universe. So that's a good reference to go to. Now turning to my Sandpeople or Tusken Raider, I'm going to look at the actual moisture trap, and that hangs there below their hood on their neck. The things I'm noticing is that there's a wire and kind of a canister, it looks like leather wrapped around it, and I want to try to do the same thing. Now starting with my supplies, I start off by getting some of this floral wire. Now this floral wire is good and bendy and to hold a shape. I need some aqua tubing, something from the pet department, and I get these spritzer bottles, and all I need are the actual spritzer bottles and not the other ones. I'm looking at the caps themselves, and I think that's going to work for what I need. I get my spritzer bottles, and let's get rid of the rest. Now looking at the spritzer bottles, I don't need the caps. And what I want to do is I want to try to put them together side by side. Take off the caps that are unneeded. Take off the spritzer head that's also unneeded. I'm going to go ahead and take this part out so I can basically gut this cap, because these interior pieces I don't need. Be careful when working with a knife. On this part, it's easy to cut the inside and you really don't want to leave too many scratches, but you do want to get that foam piece out. And a good pair of sturdy pliers is going to help pull this part out, because you really don't want that at all. Just kind of, I found, just twist and pull it to the side and it should pop out. Now that I got my caps and my bottles, I don't want to lose my caps until I'm ready for them, so I'm going to go ahead and screw them back down and set them off to the side. Now, looking at my wire, I know that I can't connect them just yet. Instead, I'm going to take my entire tube. Now, I've measured out how much tube I need, and I'm just going to kind of cut the very end. I want to hinge it. I don't want to cut through it completely. There you go, just like that. And I want to be able to take the wire and run it up into each side so it comes out the back. I noticed that if I tried to put the two wires together and run the entire tube, it wouldn't make it all the way through. It's just too thick and it has too much resistance. So this nick will allow the wires to go through without you having to force it too long. Once it gets to the other side, almost. There we go. We just kind of want to hold that off to the side so it doesn't go anywhere, and then we want to do the same to the other side, having enough of that wire to twist it together and then to kind of roll it back so you don't poke yourself with it, because the last thing you want to do is have a wire twisted into your neck the entire cosplay. Once we make sure it's nice and tight, we'll start bending the wire up a little bit, and then we're going to take these wires and we're going to run them through the bottom ends of these caps. I'm going to take some pliers and I want to twist it down and kind of make a wire knot, so that way the wire is not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay right there in the bottom. Now I found that the needle nose pliers works best for this. I think I had the bigger pliers before, but needle nose does a really good job of turning that wire on itself and creating a bit of a knot. After I'm done with the second side, I'm going to heat up some hot glue. I'm going to stick it in the cap just to kind of keep this wire from unraveling on itself. by creating a glue pocket down there. I want to make sure I don't get any glue on the threads of the cap, so that way it'll thread back onto my bottles later. Fill it up and let it cool. Now, I want to actually attach the caps to the bottle, but I don't want them coming apart. So I'm going to take a little bit of just super glue. Now I use Gorilla. You can use any ones you want, but usually an instant glue or a gel works really well here. Just go ahead, tighten them down with a little bit of glue on the threads, and it should hold. Same for one side, same for the other. Now, once I get these two set, I want to be able to attach them butt to butt to keep them from moving, because I want the caps to go on the outside. So I sand down with just a piece of 100 grit, and what I want to do is I want to get to where the surface will grab the glue on each side, and it's not going to slip. Get a little bit of hot glue on there. Be careful with the hot glue on this one, especially with high temp glue guns, because you can actually melt that plastic and cause it to warp. Just a little bit goes a long way, and you stick them together. Now, just to hold and to cover that gap, I take a little bit of painter's tape, and I'm just going to lay it over the top. Now, this happens to be pretty sticky, cheap painter's tape, so I think I'm gonna leave it on there because I think it'll do the job of concealing that little crack at between the bottles. And go ahead and start twisting up the wire. Now this is when I start looking at some of the reference material. I might even have this hanging off of my neck just so I can see exactly how those wires kind of warp to create the tubing for this moisture trap. It takes a little bit. If you don't bend it too much, it will hold. But keep in mind, if you're at a con and it kind of gets bent up, you can bend it back into place. So it's good for that. Now, before I go ahead and decide to spray paint this, I actually want to have another little silver piece. Now, as I put it on my neck, I happened to notice that those wires were bothering me. They were kind of poking in my back. So I'm just going to cut a little piece of 2mm foam. And I actually want to take that and glue it over the wires to keep them from coming up. A little bit of hot glue, and take it at steps so that way you can glue it and you're not going to burn yourself too much. And done. And that should actually create a spot that's not going to hurt you. Now we're going to take this out and spray paint with high performance enamel silver Rust-Oleum. Thankfully, I've already got mine done. What I like about this spray is it usually takes about 15 minutes. So here's what it looks like as a finished product. Looks good. And I didn't really have any priming that I had to do, because as the enamel, it stuck pretty much to the plastic and the tubing and wouldn't come up, which I'm happy about. Now, I had a couple pieces of 2mm foam. Now, this blue one I'd got from the Dollar Tree, but I noticed it's a little bit small and it doesn't exactly fit the way I wanted it to. And it usually comes in a big pack. Instead, I happened to go through my Walmart pack and I found that, yeah, I've got a piece of that 2mm foam that's a little bit bigger, and all I got to do is trim it up to fit over the ends. I don't want to show too much silver, but I also don't want it to overlap too much, so I'm missing a lot of the silver. So kind of have to find that happy medium where the ends are sticking out, but then the foam is covering where it needs to. Now I take my contact cement, and with contact cement you got to paint both your foam, and then you're also going to have to paint your prop, and you're going to have to let them dry. When applying it to the silver spray paint, I noticed that it was pulling up a little bit, and if you notice I got silver on my foam, that's because it was trying to stick. After 5 minutes, go ahead and roll your foam over slowly. I do suggest take your time on this, so that way you can get everything to line up correctly, because you want this to be almost a full piece of wrap. Now, in the end, I was left with a little bit of a gap, so I actually put a little bit of super glue over the top right in that seam and just hit it with some affixative. That way it would just solidify really quickly. I didn't have to worry about it anymore. Now I'm going to be using Acrylic, just acrylic paint, and what I have here is I have burnt umber. It's a darker brown. Before I get to painting it, I do want to cover my areas of silver right next to the foam. I don't want that to bleed over onto the aluminum spray paint because I want that to be nice and bright. I apply a generous amount of that burnt umber over the entire piece of foam, making sure I coat it really well, and then I weight the bottom of these corners to keep it upright so that way the whole thing will dry. When I come back to do my texture, I'm going to take a piece of aluminum foil and I'm going to mash it up almost like a sea sponge, okay, without having to use sea sponge. I use a nutmeg, which is a little bit brighter brown, and I'm going to basically stipple the nutmeg on top of this burnt umber. I don't want it to be completely solid. I want it to feel more like a hide or a skin. So as I stipple some on, I'm then going to take a kind of a damp towel that has texture and I'm just going to kind of mat it out. So that way I get a lot of play and texture in this. As I go around the whole thing and I mat it out, I'll notice that it does get a little bit brighter, but it'll look the part. I take off my tape, making sure that I don't pull any of the aluminum paint up, and voila, I've got a beautiful piece. So by the time I was done, I ended up with this really cool piece, and this is kind of loose, so I can roll it however I need. So if there's trouble spots on here, I can roll that towards me to hide. Just fits over your head, sits up a little bit, almost like a harmonica, and then you put your Tusken hood over the top. This is a pretty basic build to do, and it's one of those that if you are wanting to dress as a Tusken Raider, this is kind of a key component to have. Now I noticed not all Tuskens have them. When you get into some of the Tuskens in episode 1, and even some of the Tuskens in episode 2, not all of them have moisture traps. But in the new series Book of Boba Fett, as Boba Fett is living with the Tusken Raiders, you happen to notice that a lot of the deep sea Tuskens tend to prefer these. So if you're building a Tusken Raider costume or cosplay, you're going to want one of these to keep yourself wet in the whistle. So if you build one of these, please share with me. I'd love to see what you come up with on your build. And till next time, good luck with the build. Be sure to subscribe and like this video, comment down below, and be sure to hit that bell for notifications. Please follow me over at TayRaygun on Instagram.